Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to give you my weekly wrap up. It's the third week, or now we're going into the fourth week of this month. And as of today, as of the end of my third week, which always ends on Saturday for me, other people end their weeks at different days, but my week always ends on Saturday. I had read 13 books. But before I tell you about what I've read, I do want to tell you a bit about my goals. I had a difficult week because I had a fibromyalgia flare, and it really laid me low a couple of days this week. I just slept and slept and slept. One day I slept 20 hours, the other day I slept 15 hours, and then I felt good for 2 days, and then here today is Sunday, and I feel like it's hitting me all over again as if I don't deserve a break, but that's the way it is. Meanwhile, besides reading, I'm working on increasing my NetGalley feedback ratio. So anybody that's watching this that happens to be a reviewer with NetGalley, they're familiar with that. So I had a goal to write my backlog of book reviews. So I started this on July 28th, and I even made a blog post about it. And when I created a spreadsheet to help me to see what I needed to write and when it was due, which a lot of it is well past due, it was 3 columns long with hundreds of books on it. That's how far behind I was with writing. My blog never ever looks like I'm behind, because I do blog tours, and those are on scheduled days, and they always go up on time, or they have always been able to go up on time. And because I'm getting them up on time, and they're always scheduled 2, 3, 4 days, a week or two ahead, it looks like my blog has never missed a beat. But I know what I'm missing, and what I'm missing is a backlog of reviews. So I created the spreadsheet, I sorted it all out, and since July 28th, I've written 71 reviews. 20, many are posted on the blog already. 21 of them are scheduled through the month of February, and 16 are drafts. So this week here that I'm in now, considering today is Sunday, I will work on those draft reviews and even more than that. So back to the reason I'm here for this video. It's my weekly wrap-up of 13 books. 2 of those were audiobooks, and the other 11 were ebooks. The first book I read this week was When I Was You by Amber Gaza. Now the blurb describes this book as a cross between You and Fatal Attraction. Now, You I read, I don't remember who the author is. I kind of do, but I don't want to say because I could be wrong. But I read You about 3 or 4 years ago, so I remember clearly, although I've never seen the television show. In Fatal Attraction, I think it had Michael Douglas and Faye Dunaway, but I've actually never seen that movie. But still, when I read the description, I knew, boom, yes, I knew what this book was going to be about. A quick summary of the story. A woman gets a phone call. Hi, we're just here to confirm your well baby visit. And she's like, no, I don't have a baby. My son is in college. Well, curiosity got the best of her, because they said, well, aren't you so-and-so? And she goes, yes, I am. And then the receptionist must have said something like, well, there must be another woman with your name. Well, the woman who got the phone call shows up at the visit, and she sees a younger version of a woman with the same name with a healthy baby. So think of the 2 shows, the book You and the show, and Fatal Attraction. What happens? She decides to start stalking the younger version of herself, and slowly but surely gets into every aspect of her life, including what happens with the baby and with the woman, the younger woman. And it gets to be really a literal fatal attraction between one woman's obsession with another woman, only to take the child if she could. Then I had Someone to Romance by Mary Balogh. Now, Someone to Romance is the 8th book in the Westcott series, and I have read and reviewed the first 6 books, but I'm not sure what I was doing wrong, because I never got the 7th book, which was Someone to Remember. So I grabbed a hold of Someone to Remember from my library, read that, and then I read Someone to Romance. So let me tell you a wee bit about Someone to Remember. We have an older protagonists, the couple are in their 50s, and they had been in love once, but things happened and it didn't work out. And there's a reason, but I don't want to spoil it. And he goes off, and not only does he get married, but it was a loveless marriage, and he became a rake with a lot of notoriety behind it. Well, now he's a widower, and he's got grandchildren, and he sees this woman, and long story short, it's a romance, so you know what happens. Great book. I loved it. I gave it 4 stars. Then I read the actual review title. And by the way, I think every single thing I'm talking about here, every single book rather, is already reviewed on Goodreads. I don't think I'm going to link them, but you can always look them up if you'd like. Then I read Someone to Romance, which I gave 5 stars to. And this one, the protagonist was 25, just about on the shelf. And she gets her chance at love, but not through the means that she planned. She decided, this is my last season. My father's not even giving me a ball. He's not giving me fancy clothes, but I'm going to snag a husband. I don't care about love. I just want to have a marriage so I can have children, and that's going to be my life. Well, things don't turn out that way because somebody steps in and he says, puts his arm around her shoulder, and for reasons of her own, he says, I just proposed to her. And then he whispers in her ear, shh, it's okay, it'll work out. So that was kind of cute. I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 5 stars. Next book I read was Here to Stay by Adriana Herrera. Now, I really, really liked this book, and I actually had a chance to talk to 2 reviewer friends about it. I talked to Shalene, the coloring book nook. We talked more about it on the aspect of me complaining about the writing. I really did not like the writing style in this book, but I did give it 4 stars. And so Shalene and I talked about that, but we also talked about the male protagonist's father. His name was Rocco. His father was horrible, so we talked about him. And then on the other hand, I talked to my friend Fashawn, who is WTF Are You Reading? And we talked more about the Dominican part of the story, where the girl, her name is Julia Del Mar Ortiz. She's Dominican. Her family is loud, brash, fun-loving, and we talked about that culture coming into books that we're reading these days. It takes a man getting killed by a policeman for publishers to bring these beautiful multicultural, mixed cultural books into our reading. And so that's what Fashawn and I talked about. But basically, this girl, Julia, leaves New York and her big loving family to move to Texas. I'm not sure if it was Dallas or Houston, with her boyfriend, and he ends up not liking it and leaves, and she's like, no, I'm not going to give up that easily. So she stays. She's got a job at a department store, and her job basically is to I'm losing my thought. Her job is to set up charitable foundations and get funding for these foundations. Well, the company, which is a department store, wants to save money, so they hire somebody, a freelancer. His name is Rocco Quinn. He comes in, and his job is to get to the bottom line and to remove any excess funding or spending that the company does, even at the cost of this woman's job. Well, sparks fly, and they really get on well, and that's the love story of it. The emotional part of it was Rocco and his terrible father, and his strong sense of responsibility towards his sister and his niece. So, like I said, despite the fact that I wasn't fond of the writing style, I did give it 4 stars. Then I had Chaos by Iris Johansen. Now, because as I mentioned earlier in this video that I was trying to work on something with NetGalley by getting my reviews up, if I didn't mention, my ratio was 55%, and I'm trying to get it up to 80%, which will take a few months, but with that goal in mind, I was not going to look for books on NetGalley, but one day I did, and I'm so glad I did, because I saw Chaos by Iris Chaos by Iris Johansen. And let me tell you, I love Iris Johansen. I have read every book in her Eve Duncan series, her Kendra Michael, and her Catherine Ling series. Every single book, to the tune of 27, 28, 29 books. And that was just this year. So when I saw that she had Chaos, and then the description said that it had Margaret Dawson in it, I'm like, well, wait a minute. I love Margaret. She's a horse whisperer. She's been in at least 4 or 5 of the books that I have read all this time. For the heck of me, I decided to Google Margaret Johnson / Iris Johansen. Come to find out, she's in a book called No Easy Target. Didn't know about that book. So I read that book before I read Chaos. And basically, No Easy Target, again, is about Margaret Dawson, a horse whisperer, but she also has an affinity with all animals, and she has wonderful dogs and so forth. But her abilities are even extending into humans, and so it was a great mystery thriller there. And then where Margaret comes in with Chaos, which I'll talk about now, is she's a guest in that book, because this book is about CIA Special Agent Alyssa Flynn. And Alyssa has a young girl that is like a sister to her, and this girl has disappeared with other girls that have disappeared. And so what Alyssa does, and she's a kind of agent who writes her own rules, is she breaks into this billionaire's home. And when she breaks into his home, she's thinking, wait a minute, I didn't get away with it. I hear the dogs barking. Why are the dogs barking? I gave them a tranquilizer. Did I give them the right amount or what? So she kind of freezes, and then after a second or two or a minute or two, the homeowner, who's billionaire Gabe Corrigan, says, you can give it up. I know you're here. And he's in the room with her. And so she's caught red-handed, but she's a quick thinker, and she said, listen, I'm really here because I want you to help me rescue this girl who's like a sister to me, and other girls, and stop this slave trade. So they end up in the African jungle. I believe it's in African jungle. It's an African jungle. And anyway, they're trying to rescue these girls, and in the meantime, the girl that she's very close to is a prodigy, but she's also a horse whisperer, and the girl had released some horses, and this puts the girl's life at even greater risk with the people that have kidnapped her. So Margaret Dawson, the horse whisperer that I mentioned earlier, comes into working with Alyssa, Gabe Corrigan, and they go to rescue the girls and the horses. Great story, and I hope that it's going to be a new series. And my notes are out of order, so let me try to reorder them, but I do know them pretty well anyway. So that's all I want to talk about Chaos. Now we're going to talk about Into the Blue. Into the Blue was my breakout book of the week, because I didn't expect much from it. I didn't really even want to read it. It was coming off of a day that I had been ill for 2 days previously, so when I got to Into the Blue, I was just kind of recovering from that flare, and I'm like, I don't know. Well, I got a really nice surprise. It was a thrilling romantic suspense story. Really, really good. It was a guy who was assigned to find a woman who had been kidnapped and was taken, and so he ends up finding her and taking her to Costa Rica, to a blue island, so to speak, and protects her until they can get this bad guy. His name is Mark Spencer. He's a pharmaceutical rep who is bringing in bad drugs to companies. So this woman found out what he was doing, and that put her life at risk. As a matter of fact, her friend was killed when they were kidnapped. She didn't get killed, but she almost lost her life, and this guy rescues her. And the only reason I gave this book 4 stars is because she cried a lot. And I like stronger heroines than that. And so the next book I read was kind of my cutesy book for the week, and that was The Last Man She Expected by Michelle Major. This is for a blog tour for the 25th, so it's already on NetGalley and Goodreads, but it'll be on the blog in a couple of days. And this book was basically about a woman whose good friend or best friend's brother ends up being her ex-husband's divorce attorney. So as far as she's concerned, he's public enemy number 1. Well, of course things don't work out that way because it's a romance. So I really like that book. Then I read the 10th book in the Blessings, Georgia series by Sharon Sala. It was called Once in a Blue Moon. Very, very, very lovely story. I love to read books in series, and I love to read books in order. However, I only happened upon Sharon Sala last year, so I couldn't get to all of these books. So as of the time that I read Once in a Blue Moon, I had only read, I think, book 3 and book 6. So I have maybe 8 more books in the J.D. Robb series, and when I'm caught up with that, I plan on going back to the Blessings Georgia series and read it from book number 1 until I'm caught up, so that when the next book is released, I will have read the whole series. It was a very, very sweet story. Now, I snuck in what is the first of several Christmas stories that I'll read this season or this year. I don't celebrate Christmas, but I like Christmas stories because of their Hallmark type feeling. I loved Hallmark movies when I used to watch movies, and so I like to read these stories because they're always sweet, they always have a happy ending, and they're usually very well written. So the one that I chose to read this week was The Amish Christmas Gift. It was a good story. It was about a couple who were madly in love, but the man had issues that created guilt in his mind, and that guilt made him feel that he wasn't worthy to be a good Christian husband. And because he could not be a husband, he couldn't be with the woman that he loved. I only was able to give this book 4 stars, and the reason why is because I think the communication between the couple could have been better, and also because the book had more passion than all of the Amish books I've read so far. And I don't want that. I don't expect that when I read an Amish title. I like the clean, like a white tablecloth type of book, because I need to break away from psychological thrillers, crime fiction, mystery thrillers, historical fiction, and those heavy books that I read. So I need books like this to kind of bring me down a couple of pegs so that I can get ready to read my next intense read. So it was only because of the communication and the excess passion. And when I say excess passion, I as a reader felt it, but the woman's brother, the man's sister, the head of the Amish area where they lived, and even a chaperone, they all felt there was too much passion. So that's why I only got 4 stars. But it still was a good story, but I just think that could have been dialed down a little bit. Then I read The Mountains Wild by Sarah Stewart Taylor. This has been in my TBR for months. It was a good side to a new police procedural series where a woman went to Ireland years ago because her cousin turned up missing. And then even though she was there for several weeks, she wasn't able to find out what happened to her cousin. And then she goes back home, and as she grew up, she decided to become a cop, and now she's a detective. Well, she gets a phone call from her uncle, and next thing you know, she's back in Ireland, in Dublin, trying to get behind the case of another missing girl. And also there was something that was connected to her cousin that was found at that scene. So it's the beginning of a new series, and I think I'm going to enjoy it. I think that's from Minotaur Books, and I don't know that I've read many I was going to say I haven't read many Minotaur series, but I have, because I read The Hollows and the Widows by Jess Montgomery. But I don't generally read a lot of series from Minotaur, so I'm kind of looking forward to following that series. Then I read Trust No One by Deborah Webb. Now this was almost a miss for me, because when I went to read it, it was already in my TBR, because I curate a huge TBR every single month. But when I went to look it up, it wasn't there, and I realized that I had let it archive before I downloaded it from NetGalley. So I figured, hey, my TBR is massive. I won't miss anything if I don't read this one book. But then I'm like, no, I really like Deborah Webb. I read a half dozen of her books this past year and a half. I love her stuff. I gotta look for it. So I went to Amazon, and I was gonna buy it, $5.99, $7.99. I would have bought it. But as it turns out, it was on Kindle Unlimited as an ebook and an audiobook. So I said to myself, score! So I listened to it in one sitting. Really good book. I believe it's the start of a new series. It is the start of a new series. And it introduces a heroine named, or a protagonist named Maggie Darcy, and her partner are on the case of a man who was murdered, and his mother-in-law was also shot. They were both shot to death, but the wife is missing. So Maggie and her partner are there. I think her name, I'm thinking, I might be confusing the partners. Well, in any event, they're looking for this missing woman, but while they're looking for this missing woman, the events of the case, or the clues of the case, start to bring things too close to home to Maggie. And Maggie has a teen daughter, so as the tension ratchets up, we start to see how the case that Maggie's on ties into something in her life. And I thought it was very, very well done, and I look forward to continuing that series. And the last book that I read was The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett, and I hope I said that properly. I have always wanted to read that book. As a matter of fact, I always wanted to catch up on classics that I either haven't read for years and years or have never read altogether. And The Secret Garden is one that I had never read. Well, I was flipping through NetGalley and I saw that it came up as an audiobook. So I requested it and I got it. And I was able to listen to it in one sitting. Very, very, very wonderful story, narrated by Glenda Jackson, who was an Oscar-winning actress. The story had her wonderful voice, but it also had music, and it had the sounds of birds, and if there was wind howling, it had the wind, and it was a very, very good production. And then when I went to, by the way, if you don't already know, because I didn't know, it was about a little girl who was an orphan. She's with her uncle now. She was a precocious little brat, temper tantrums and all. And it was only because of a certain garden, or a secret garden, that she began to change. And of course, this affected her relationship with her uncle. And as I went to talk about this book on one of my groups, somebody told me that there's a movie coming out about it. So now I really want to see it, because this book was written in 1910 in serial format in a magazine, but it wasn't put into book format until 2011. And I'm thinking, if it stayed in serial format, we might not have it today. But in 2011, it had its 100th anniversary. And now here we are in 2021. I'm in 2020. I'm thinking ahead. And this book has stood the test of time. I know that it's assigned in schools, and it's been made into movies and plays and any format that's been available. It's been translated into a number of languages, so I count it as a privilege to have had the chance to have listened to this book. As a matter of fact, I kind of want to listen to it again, because the audio was only a few hours, so it's well worth another listen. But anyway, that's all that I did this week. Those are the 13 books that I read, and I'm happy that I was able to share all of that with you right now, even though, like I said, this is my second video, because the first one I forgot my microphone, and I know my voice is a bit too soft if I don't use a mic. So that's it for now, and I will be back next week with another wrap up. Until then, you all have a wonderful, wonderful week. Bye bye.